So before we get into kind of the thing that I found was as interesting, like you were talking about type 1 diabetes, can you give us a little bit more of your background? How did you decide that this is what you wanted to do, and what kind of led you down this path?
Yeah. So I've been interested in food and nutrition for as long as I can remember. I even remember being in primary school and, really looking up to my mum, who I thought was really healthy, and I was really interested in what food actually did to my body from a very, very young age. But in high school, I suppose that sort of turned into something a little bit negative and a little bit toxic. And I decided I wanted to lose a little bit of weight, just like a lot of other teenage girls, and ventured down the path of low-fat dieting and calorie counting,
That never works.
and found myself, no, it never works. And it became extremely toxic for me. At the beginning, it started off as this, I went online and I just Googled, okay, well, how can I lose weight? And the first thing that pops up is actually the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating. And I was like, okay, I can do that. I can eat these low-fat foods. I can cut that energy-dense food out of my diet. And so it started off as a journey towards better health. But somewhere along the line, it just became an obsession, and I lost a lot of weight. I lost about 30 kilograms, and I was very, very skinny and unhappy. My quality of life was absolutely terrible, and all I could do was focus. All I cared about was how many calories I was taking in. I was eating about 800 calories a day, and I remember, putting a little sad face if I'd eaten like 820 calories. I was really upset with myself. My whole day was ruined. It was really bad. And then, I did hit that sort of turning point. Like, I was very lucky to have been able to sort of reach a moment of realization, and get myself off the weight loss path. And I said, right, I'm going to rebuild my relationship with food again. I'm just going to go back to how I was before I started dieting in the first place, because I didn't want my life to be consumed by this dieting. And so I tried to, quote unquote, eat normal again, but that in itself was very, very difficult. And then I ended up gaining a lot of weight very quickly, which sort of intensified my disordered eating, made it even worse. And it wasn't until this whole time I wanted to be a dietitian. So despite all of this, I was still like, yep, this is what I want to do. But I was sort of just waiting for that moment where I was actually confident in helping other people with their diet, because I was confused about myself. And eventually, in my first year of university, I did a bachelor in exercise science, and it was in the exercise biochemistry and physiology lecture where I actually learned about the role of insulin. And so now I'm sitting in this lecture and I'm actually a bit overweight now because I've gained a whole bunch of weight really quickly. And I was struggling with binge eating, and I was trying to just get back to my healthy weight and my healthy self. And so I learned about the role of insulin, and I just learned, okay, well, if we can keep insulin levels low, then we can burn fat. But if insulin levels are high, we're completely blocked to our stored body fat and we're relying on glucose for energy. So I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to try this. So I loaded myself up on lots of fats, and I just reduced my carbs quite significantly. And it was just within a few short months, I stopped all binge eating episodes, which was amazing for my quality of life. My social life improved because I wasn't stuck at home eating everything in the cupboard. I wasn't feeling guilty after food. I had a really positive relationship with food again. And within about a year, I was able to return to my healthy weight. So I lost about 15 kilos back to my healthy weight, pretty much where I was when I started all of this in high school. But the most amazing thing too is I spent all of my life, or all of my high school years and adolescence years, fluctuating up and down with my weight. And since finding a low carb, high fat sort of lifestyle, I've been able to really effortlessly maintain my weight, and I guess as well get really into the metabolic side of things. And I guess my focus on health itself, because it was on weight originally, and that's where everything was, I was just like, yep, it's all about weight. But then my focus on health kind of happened about in my second year of uni, and I did a 5-year degree, where my dad actually had a heart attack, and he was diagnosed with diabetes. So he survived his heart attack, but when he was in hospital, after it happened, they said, "Oh, you've got type 2 diabetes." And he goes, "No, I don't. I've been to the doctor every year. I know I don't have type 2 diabetes." And they said, "Well, look at your blood sugars." And they showed him, and they were through the roof. So he messaged me straight away. He told me what happened. He told me what they were feeding him in hospital, which was horrendous. And then I just dug into the research, and from there it was all about the research for me, and it was all about health. How can we prevent diabetes? How can we manage diabetes? How can we prevent cardiovascular disease? And the focus completely came off weight for me. I knew I was going to dedicate my career to helping people with diabetes improve their blood sugars essentially and reduce their risk of complications, because my dad was left waiting in the dark for his heart attack. He was being proactive. He was going to the doctor regularly. I believe it was 100% preventable.
Diane had a similar thing like that happen to her.
I was going to say, yeah, I had a very similar thing that happened to me. I chased a dog out the front door and ripped my Achilles in half, and so they had to do the surgery. And when I went to go have the surgery done, or did the pre-surgery blood work, they called me back and they said, "Oh, you can't have the surgery because you have type 2 diabetes." And I said, "No, I don't." And they said, "Yes, you do." And so I told the doctor, I said, "Well, I'm not keeping it." And he goes, "Okay, I'll go with that." And so I knew I'd actually had some experience with type 1 diabetes with a family member. And so I had experience and knew where to start. And so that's and I did. I lost over 100 pounds and got rid of it. And I haven't turned back. That's probably 7 years ago, and haven't had to worry about it since. So yeah, I totally get that. I wasn't going to the doctor though. I wasn't seeing the doctor by any means on a regular basis, but I was eating like just a terrible diet. And then I just started with the low carb, and then Aaron came in with the no sugar, and then he ended up losing over 200 pounds. And so that all changed our entire lifestyle. But luckily our kids were already out of the house, because they never would have stood for it.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. It's harder to get the kids on board, but I think, when it comes to our family members, when they see you guys doing what you're doing and you guys being the example, that's the best sort of influence others, because we can talk our ears off and talk their ears off and really try and want someone to change, but it's when they're ready that they can make those decisions. But it's really amazing to hear your health journey and how you guys have progressed. It's a difficult thing. Even though we know about low carb nutrition, doesn't mean that it's now all of a sudden easy to lose weight. It's still hard. We just now have a tool where we're somewhat empowered, because it works, and the scientific literature is really strong to back low carbohydrate nutrition up for many health conditions. So it was the same thing with my dad. Straight away I just said to him, "You've got to try this low carbohydrate diet." And I guess more than saying to him, "Oh, here's what you have to eat," I was kind of just like, well, here's the education behind it. Take a look for yourself. Take a look at the science. And that really sort of swayed him, and he was like, "This just makes so much sense." Because obviously he was in the sort of standard healthcare system at that time. He was in hospital when I was talking to him. He was, going to conventional cardiologists, and he was even sent to dietitians and things like that. So he really had to be confident in his decision, because he had all these other people that were very high up in the medical world saying something a little bit different.
Right.